So I'm going to tell a little personal piece as I go through this. But I grew up in Venice, California, and I went to a public high school called Venice, California, where there were 3,000 students. This was not a little place. And the school was kind of known for its pranks, and that big white cage was a cage that was over a statue of the actress, the famous actress Myrna Loy, that Venice High School thought, in the 1940s, was the only famous person that had ever come out of Venice High School. But the students, what they liked to do was, every year the senior class, the graduating class, would destroy the statue. And they tried to put this cage on it, and then one day we drove by and somebody stuffed newspapers in there and lit it on fire, right? So this was not a particularly academic environment, right? I was lucky enough, however, from Venice High School to get into Harvard, which was a very different educational approach, right? So for me, the change was enormous. And the first year, they asked that we did basic computer programming. And this was what basic computer programming looked like. And actually, I was very good at it, and I was teaching all my friends. But because the rest of my academic preparation was more Venice High School than Harvard, I got very nervous. And there was all these guys in those classes, and there were no women, and people kept saying how hard it was, and I didn't continue my education. And then came something called CompuServe, which was one of the early internet programs, and I was Nonny at CompuServe.com. I was an early person, and I won their award for the most interesting use of their technology, which actually I used to track down people in a major documentary story, including on the Unabomber was one of them, and another one, Chappaquiddick, if you remember the Unabomber, was a guy who was blowing up academics in America. At the same time, the Howard Rheingold book on virtual reality came out. And once I read that book, this is the early 90s, I thought, this is what I want to do with my life. But I didn't really know how to, I hadn't done the programming courses. I didn't know how to get into it. But I went on to become a journalist. I became a correspondent for Newsweek magazine. And I started making documentary films. And this is one of my films that came out in 2003. And it was all about all the civil liberties problems in America after 9/11. And it had a big segment on Guantanamo Bay Prison. And we had a good friend who would call up the American company news broadcaster, NPR, and say, I love your story on Guantanamo Bay Prison. And the person who answered the phone would say, what story? And he'd go, exactly, that's the problem. Why aren't you covering this? So because of that energy, I felt exactly the same way about Gitmo. And I was able to get a grant from the MacArthur Foundation, something called the Bay Area Video Coalition, where we would take a documentary and turn it into a digital project. I took the Gitmo section. And the thing is, I wanted to use my journalistic skills, but here was this place that was off limits. No journalists could go, no reporters could go, no people could go. So we made a digital version in Second Life. It was in contrast to the real but inaccessible prison. So this was built in Second Life in 2007, and this is really my first big foray into VR. It was a virtual world, but it was an online computer world. And then it was I was offered to put an installation in the Moscow Museum of Modern Art in 2013. And at this point, I really, really wasn't going to stop becoming a good coder. I'd begun to dabble, and I was now a research fellow at the University of Southern California. And I was going to become a good coder. And this is the room I walked into. As you can see, it's all guys. I actually pulled out my phone and took quick pictures because I remembered that sensation of walking into this room full of men. But I wasn't walking out this time. I was old enough, and I was confident enough, and I was going to continue to do my work here. And this story is important in the end. I had a little help. I met the head of Unity, which is the game engine programming company that has made so much of this possible. And for that Moscow piece, I told him what I was doing, and I needed a professional license, which was expensive. And I was working with one of those students helping me program. I emailed him, and he turned around and sent me a free license within 5 minutes. And the student was like, oh my God, that's like writing to the head of Mercedes-Benz and getting a free Mercedes. So I earned their respect. And they helped me, and together I got the piece together. And how do you do journalism in a virtual world? So this is a photograph of the way that detainees were brought to the actual prison. And this is what it looked like when we began to do the construction. We also built this room to kind of talk about the habeas corpus area. And you could query this wall. You could ask questions, you know, like, can I call my family? And it would respond, no, you can't call your family. What am I in here for? I'm sorry, I don't have the information. And it was a way to start giving you an interactivity and understanding what it means to lose your habeas corpus rights, right? So we built this kind of intricate thing. And because of that piece, I was actually invited to work with this couple in Barcelona. Mel Slater has been doing virtual reality since the 90s, a pioneer in the field, and his wife, Maria Sanchez Vives. And they were working on this project on the bystander effect. And this story, this woman supposedly was murdered, and all these people saw it and didn't do anything, this woman, Kitty Genovese. Well, you can't put people at a real scene, right, if some activity's going on. So they had to make a virtual one. And in this case, the guy walks in with the wrong football jersey on, and the other guy attacks him. This is my first walk-around experience. And I've got these huge goggles on I'm going to show you in a minute. And I remember this cable, and I was pulling to get into the scene. And that was the moment when I realized that I could no longer put my audience out there. My audience had to be inside the story with me. But here's the other super interesting thing, is what they found was that actually the more people who were on a scene, the more likely it was that people were going to try to intervene. And in fact, that story of this woman who nobody helped was a lie. The reporters got it wrong. And it took this VR piece in this time period to say that clearly their research that they ended up doing in VR was more correct than the original report. And a couple years later, it came out that in fact people had tried to help. So taking all this knowledge I'm starting to accumulate, I wanted to do something about the fact that detainees in America were being held in these prisons for hours and hours without really know what does that mean. They called it enhanced interrogation, and people would just have to stay in these stress positions. So along with Mel, we built this piece.
On this head-mounted display.
So these are the old goggles.
If this is uncomfortable, tell me.
All right.
So he's wearing a breathing strap, so he's breathing at the same time. You look down, you see your knees. And the audio you're hearing in the background came from the interrogation log of a man named Al-Qahtani, who the Bush administration said had been tortured. Now here's the interesting thing. Everybody who saw the piece was sitting on that chair, and they had their hands behind their back. And afterwards, they were just sitting upright. But afterwards, we asked everybody, what was your body like? And everybody reported being hunched over into a stress position. Now, once we saw that, it became very, very clear that this was a crazy, you know, to me, like extraordinary, powerful medium. And we published the first immersive journalism paper in an MIT journal called Presence, Immersive Virtual Reality for the First-Person Experiences of the News. But of course, this is a big question. Does this mean that, you know, we're putting people in a subjective person? And does that challenge the integrity of the journalism report? This video came out after we had made our piece, and very clearly we had actually done something pretty accurate. There was no images or video beforehand when we were working. You can see the rest of it if you'd like to online. So the next piece I decided to work on at USC was something called Hunger in Los Angeles. And Hunger in Los Angeles was a collaboration with the students who were doing video, audio, photographs. They were being trained to do web print journalism, really is what I would call it, web journalism, which at the time seemed innovative. This is 2008. In 2010, by the way, I asked the students who'd want to work on a VR piece with me, and nobody held up their hand. In the end, I got a friend of mine's daughter who was graduating from high school, not yet at university or college, and together we started recording audio at food banks. until one day she was standing at this scene, it's this very long line, and a man with diabetes who's waiting in that line doesn't get food in time. His blood sugar drops too low, and he collapses on the ground. And she came back to my office crying, and I thought, this is what I have to build with. So we had no money. I spent $700 of my own money, but I had a little better coding skills now.
There's too many people. There's too many people. Somebody just pull down. Okay, he's having a seizure. Okay.
Picture the other down, please. Need help. So you can see he's standing at the foot of the seizure victim. And you might recognize that as being Alejandro Gonzalez Iñárritu, because I introduced Alejandro to VR and actually worked on Carne and Arena, much to my luck. But that's Alejandro. I've shown this video many times, but I've never talked about it being Alejandro. But you'll see he's very careful not to step on the body. And this is Alejandro, with our big, huge goggles at this point still, right? And you'll see he doesn't step on the character. And this is this moment of understanding that you're having your whole body in the scene, and that even though they're not there, they feel like they're there. You treat them like they're there, right? So that piece got into Sundance in January of 2012. This is fall of 2011. And again, those are those big, crazy headsets, the only thing we had. And when we got into Sundance, the head of the lab said to me, you're not taking those goggles anywhere. They're $50,000 a pair. There's only one left. They weren't making them anymore. So we had to make goggles. And this is us working on goggles, right? Trying to find something I can take with me. And the kid was got his head in that mask. His name's Palmer Luckey. You might know him. But this is the goggles that we showed up with at Sundance, right? This new pair. And I didn't know what people were going to do and how they were going to react. And this is opening night. You can see she's in shock. She's down with the poor man who's having the seizure. She ends up in tears, trying to talk to him, trying to help him. And this was an extraordinary, extraordinary, extraordinary thing for me. I had no idea the power of this medium. You can see she's crying. And again, take a look at those goggles. You'll see they're signed PR4 HMD. We call them head-mounted displays in, and that's Palmer Luckey's signature. Here he is. He had gone with me to Sundance. He crashed in my hotel room, slept in my hotel room, and drove my truck back. And then 9 months later, after we premiered this, he started Oculus Rift. And I feel pretty proud to point that out. That period of time, it was because we were working on a piece about hunger. So the next piece that I worked on was about a man named Anastasio Rojas. He was brought to the United States as a young boy. He lived very peacefully there as a construction worker until in America in the downturn, he could not, on Mother's Day, he stole a bottle of tequila and steak for his wife. He was arrested. He was deported. He tried to sneak back into his 5 children, and the Border Patrol caught him, and they beat him up. He reported to a supervisor, and instead of doing anything about it, the supervisor put him in this dark pen. And we made a VR piece about it. And then, this will get very loud in a minute, so be careful, audio. At this point, again, you'll see the construction of the headset's pretty crazy. We're traveling with 22 motion tracking cameras. But BuzzFeed invited us to show it to their team, and they made this video. So those were our motion tracking cameras.
I don't even know what these are. I guess cameras?
Looks like somebody's gonna shock me.
That guy's holding a lightsaber back there.
I think virtual reality really is like the next big thing. I think it's the new video game or whatever that means.
It's so weird. There's like all these people and I'm like, what is about to happen?
How's this look with my hair? Pretty good, right?
Oh, got it. All right. Whoa!
This is going to simulate a cell phone, so it's going to be
when you press this button here,
Yeah.
and you hold it up in front of you, a cell phone will appear, and you'll have 60 seconds to record whatever you want before your battery dies.
Oh, I see. Oh my God. That's even crazier.
All right, so there's a bunch of cops here. They're like standing around, something's going on.
Oh, right here. That's not cool.
Like on the other side of a fence, there's all these people just like kicking and beating this man, and he's screaming.
Look at this, and nobody's doing anything about it. Of course nobody's doing anything about it, right? Of course, because that's what people do, they just watch. It's kind of messed up.
Oh, here we go.
I couldn't tell before, but I think he's handcuffed.
I'm looking above. I'm seeing the horror.
Hey, we're recording you!
Already not moving, but there's like 5 dudes beating him.
Same thing, they just are not stopping. I don't know, I mean, I can't believe that like is real.
Did not expect a recreation of a real life beating.
I thought it was going to be some sort of, possibly some, you know, entertaining game. That was not the case.
You feel kind of like helpless and isolated.
Hopefully in that situation you actually would be able to like somehow stop it, but I do think like the next best thing is recording it.
I wonder what I would really do. Like, I know you want to say stuff, it's okay to say stuff, but it's like, I don't have the power to go and arrest the police. Maybe that's problematic.
I think when you see something like that, you're like, wow, that was horrible, but at least like the one comfort that I have is like the United States justice system will do something about it, and like people that do bad things get punished for that. And then like what we've been seeing the past few weeks is like sometimes that doesn't happen.
The thing that was really sort of disorienting is that it wasn't one cop doing it and his partner, it was all these other cops sort of standing around and watching.
I think every police officer in the United States probably needs to experience what I just experienced.
I think everyone should give this a shot.
And it should not only be for entertainment. I think there should be a whole universe of stuff that we can use this for. And this is definitely something I didn't consider at all. And it's really effective.
So ANASTASIO died from this encounter, right? And this story didn't get any play in the major press across America, right? And the way that this story even came to light was because this woman who witnessed the main thing, there were 2 people who had recorded on their phones, and the Border Patrol was taking everybody's phone, and she stuck it in her handbag and she managed to get off, right? And what we did is we brought her into the studio, and I recorded her telling her story with motion capture, so that when you're looking over at the scene, you're standing next to her. So she's telling the story, her recreation, her recollection of the story with her body as much as with her words. And we also had to make a digital model of her. So we had to scan her and create a model that with her standing next to you while you were in the story. Now for a story that, a piece, an important moment, got very few views or very little knowledge in America. This BuzzFeed video has now almost got 1 million views, I'm proud to say. And of course there's a lot of discussion about race in America, and then occasionally some wonderful funny little gems like this one. Damn, I Googled use of force VR expecting someone being a Jedi in VR. Not what I expected, but anyway. Just a little bit more, those are the goggles as you saw that we're making. We were also making hand controllers. These were before there were even controllers available to us, so we had to construct our own. Again, amazingly, with all those bloody cameras everywhere. This is probably the last time we used our own goggles. We did a Formula 1 piece that was kind of fun. And we let people race against each other. And they were timed, and it was for fancy CEOs at the Formula 1 racetrack. And this was a kid first to put you in the middle of the pit crew before you drove the car. Whoa. And he's in with all the pit crew people.
This is so cool.
So cool, right? That's what you want to hear from young kids. So, and this was how you raced. We had everything tracked in the cars. The leaderboard, which you can't see because of the way the video is recorded,
Doing wacky stuff. Bye-bye.
Oh my God, Michael!
Fireworks.
Oh, fuck.
So, in a more serious note again, I was invited by the World Economic Forum to make a piece about Syria and Syrian refugees. So also in 2013, anyway, here's a trailer. It's just so depressing. Again, how do we make something that's all digital like that? We had to recreate the streets using video, audio, photographs, everything that we could find to give us really detailed maps. So even down to the rubble, we were careful to reproduce it one-to-one. And I had Syrian refugees, Syrian folks come in and tell me that even the color of the bricks that we did was appropriate. At the World Economic Forum, we had everybody from Peter Gabriel to John McCain go through, the Syrian contingent. But here's the thing, it was then invited to the Victorian Albert Museum in London. And they didn't announce it anywhere, that was not advertised, and it had a 5-day run. Again, you see the crazy onerous equipment we were working with our old tapestry storytelling up against our new cameras. But after 5 days, we had 54 pages of guest book comments. And the curators told us they'd never seen such an outpouring of story. And the comments are incredible, amazing, completely immersed, a real feeling as if you're in the middle of the TV news, absolutely believable, quite frightening, even though it's that digital technology you saw. But this was the most important one for me. This was a very difficult piece to experience as a Syrian family who's still living in alms. Although I felt that the piece was inappropriate at first, I've certainly changed my mind after experiencing it firsthand. It's important for the world to bear witness to the situation in Syria, and this is a powerful and effective way to do that. I hope you're able to grow this technology further. So that is a message to everyone in this room. Since then, I've done multiple pieces where we only have the sound. This tells the story of two sisters who try unsuccessfully to rescue a third sister from a fatal attack by an ex-boyfriend. 3 women a day are killed by their ex-boyfriends or intimate partners in America, usually with a gun.
Hello, this is Charleston County 911. We received a call from this number. Is everything okay?
My nephew's on the phone. He just called. Asked us to come to their house because my sister, baby daddy, has a gun on her.
What's your name?
Zakia Lawson.
What is your name?
My name is Tanisha Lawson. Oh, man.
Okay, Miss Lawson, just stay on the line with me. I just have a couple questions for you. I know.
So the audio goes on to record the entire series of events that unravel in this very tragic way. But the way that we did it was we rebuild the scene digitally very carefully. Again, we use source material, and so you can see on the left are the original photographs, and on the right are the detailed models that we build. Similarly, we were invited to do a piece about what do young women face in America when they try to go to healthcare clinics, particularly with Planned Parenthood and I don't know if you're familiar with our anti-abortion protesters in America, but this thing that happens when young women try to cross over the line, they get really screamed at and attacked. And I'm going to play some stuff on that. But how do we put you on scene when that happens? Well, we shot a 360 video, but we also made you have to cross the line yourself. And the way that we get our models, again, is we have to scan humans. So this is a guy we scan, that's a virtual model. But then how do we activate it? We have to put animation on it. And this is him, he's mouthing real audio. And every person who yells at you is real audio. You can turn this up, right?
You're a whore. You're a whore. You're a whore. You're a little whore. How about stop being a whore? You whore. Shame on you. Start closing your legs. Start having some respect for your body. Maybe your parents should have aborted you.
Okay, so that's really what happens every day in America. right? And amazing thing is that piece got shown to 2 communities who were very anti-abortion communities. But what happened is they came out of it, and we didn't expect them to change their view, to be okay about abortion. That's not what we expected. But what we did find was that, in fact, people felt women should not be treated that way when they go into these healthcare clinics. And they said they would vote against congresspeople, against people who wanted to continue those kind of protests. They wanted to protect women after they saw this piece, and that is the most amazing result of how VR can come together. I'm going to talk to you a little bit about kinematic versus cinematic. Cinematic is really what you're looking on your mobile phones when you're in the 360 video here. There's lots and lots and lots of different kinds of cameras and setups in which you can shoot in 360 now. And we've done some really amazing work. This was in Calais in association with the BBC, these incredible camps. Some beautiful footage that you get. But then, and we also shot a piece that's been a Arte, New York Times, AJ Plasser spot.
Wow, 6 of them. It hits near us, it gets this sound of
see the realism is quite
here in the
perfect.
Nuba Mountains. Our children, our sisters, our fathers have lived entire lives in war.
So that's what's shot in the Nuba Mountains in Sudan. But I want to talk to you a little bit about how we're now doing the combination. With 360 video, right, you can never get any closer. You can't do any of the walking around. You could never cross that line, right? So now we're doing a lot of stuff that we call photogrammetry. What you're looking at there is a series of photographs, which are the ones taken on top, algorithmically stitched together into 3D models. So how have we been applying that? This is not a video. This is a photogrammetry inside a solitary confinement cell in a solitary confinement prison in America. And that is a recording of somebody in the headset walking around and examining the interior of a room. So it is photo exact real, right? So how do we get a person in there now, right? I've been working closely with a company called 8i, and we brought a guy in who spent 5.5 years inside that solitary confinement prison, and you have to shoot him from every angle, and then he gets algorithmically stitched together
when
to
I
become
walked into my cell,
a hologram
I didn't realize
inside
that
the prison.
I'd be spending 5.5 years of my life in solitary confinement. I look fine, but I'm not. 18 years old, I was new to the system, never really been in trouble before. As an adult, the solitary confinement and the sensory deprivation, years of it, drove a relatively sane young man
So no,
insane.
you could be inside that
Cut
cell,
myself
walking around
thousands
with
of times,
him,
just
leaning over
over
him.
and over and over
He's
and
right
over.
there in the room
I
next to you,
acted
and now
out,
you're inside
I
a real
assaulted
cell
staff,
with a
I
real
committed
person.
arson,
I
I did a
cannot
lot
get
of bad
you
things,
any closer
but that's
to
what
being
solitary
on a scene.
confinement does to you. It breaks you down and it turns.
That piece just won the jury award at South by. We've been taking a lot of awards lately. It's been really, really exciting. But I realize I'm getting a little behind. So I was asked by Congress to a bipartisan committee to look into a women's history museum for the mall in D.C. And I chose this amazing, badass woman publisher and revolutionary printer. She actually printed the first official Declaration of Independence in America, which had all the guys' names signed to it. And she did something really crazy. She signed her own full name at the bottom. So actually this woman signed the Declaration of Independence. But she was so badass that when she died, she left money all to her slave and set her free. But there was no money to make this piece, so what do? Well, fortunately in Massachusetts, they'd reconstructed already this beautiful, beautiful revolutionary era printing press room, and they let us come and do photogrammetry. So these show you the early rough images of the photogrammetry, right? And again, I did holograms, and now your place. Now you could walk around, you're in there with them, you're in the room, and I was able for just a few $1,000s to recreate that entire very expensive revolutionary room, right? You can turn the audio back up. It's you getting audio? It doesn't matter. I'll move on. We've also been shooting some very beautiful combination of 360 video. We've been working on a piece about climate change with some NASA scientists. That's a walk around on a side of a glacier with the NASA as a hologram. And we take you underwater, which is really important part of why sea levels are rising and how glaciers are melting from underneath. But we also did something a little bit unusual, that we clamped a 360 camera to an edge of a helicopter, as you could see. But then we took that video and we wrapped it around so that you're inside the helicopter now, right? And what you're seeing out the window is the real video. But now you feel like you're in the helicopter and you're flying and you can actually look out into the space. And that's been really effective and cool because sometimes when you're moving a camera, it can make you nauseous. But if you're inside the helicopter and looking at this video, we're having a really good rate of people not getting ill. I'm going to keep going just to say I really feel like I'm very proud to be part of the VR community. There's a lot of people doing stuff for good. There's Oculus for good. Vive has got a thing for good. I know you're going to hear about from Gabo, whose incredible piece, The Last Goodbye, I highly recommend. There's Tree Hugger and on White Rhinoceros. And the last things I want to talk about is how do we survive, right? We know that journalism can be difficult, especially to fund. So my company did a number of commercial projects. We did a piece on Fifth Avenue for Cartier where we rebuilt the streets from early Fifth Avenues because that building never changed. And we first did it, so you're standing there in the 1950s, and then you go on to the 1970s while you're standing on the street corner. It's an actual spatial time lapse, right? So this is, I think, the first time we've had to do a time lapse. And then you go on to, and because we had a high-end budget, we can make it look really beautiful. And that was really fun for us, too, because we don't often get those kind of budgets. Did I get to the present day? Yeah. Okay. We also worked with the Wall Street Journal and Google to create a spatial visualization of the stock markets. I sort of talk about why would a spatial of data work for you. If you imagine a dinner table, and you looked at the dinner table, you'd very quickly be able to tell how many plates or glasses or forks or knives are there, right? But not only that, you'd be able to discern the pattern. How many people are coming for dinner? And this kind of work in visualizing the data is been very successful for us too. We also have a little bit of fun. This was a piece that I was invited to Art Basel to make. And in this artist, he decided to walk a brick wall across a street in China in the middle of all the crazy boom. So brick by brick, he had to walk the bricks over, right? And now, I should have had a better video than this, but you can kind of see at the bottom, you now have to walk the bricks without getting hit by trucks. And that piece was a hit at Art Basel, and it's being asked to travel around the world now. I just wonder if you turn the audio back up, but this piece also, it's great rock and roll hotel room trashings. So we're putting you in the middle of real scenes where artists have, we've got Slash from Guns N' Roses attached, and then you get an opportunity to smash and crash, right? We have this fun Western one it's a multiplayer Western piece. Oh, I see that video is not going to work. Okay, but never mind. And then I'm going to finish up with this last bit of a note. And this is really for all you women in the world and for all you men to help support the women. As you saw from the beginning how nervous I was to walk into that original room, I still have to face off on a lot of things. I was invited to this crazy event last year. It's called Founders Forum. Luckily, I was invited again. But last year, they asked me to have dinner with 14 people in this small room. And it was Prince William, Eric Schmidt, the head of Google, Jimmy Wales from Wikipedia, the guy who started Skype, etc, blah, blah, car, etc, right? Like, holy shit. And I asked the Prince's handler, like, where should I sit? And she pointed for me to sit basically next to Jimmy Wales, and I would have been right across from the Prince and Eric Schmidt. But no, I got really nervous, and I ran to the end of the table, and I sat facing nobody, by myself at the end of the table, which is quite the opposite of what Sheryl Sandberg says about lean in. So my message to you today is like, don't do what I did. Lean in, get in there, go for it, and learn that coding, and you too can make it work. And thank you very much.